Sunday afternoons with Paula and Nate. I am Paula Renee.
And I am Nathan Seller. We are drawing on the Word of God and gospel music to help make ourselves and our community better.
And as promised, we have a special guest today. Tori Seals is a provisionally licensed counselor.
Professional counselor.
Mental health is her business. What is the focus of your practice, Tori?
Directly to the mic.
Well, my emphasis is in couples and family, but I also see individuals and groups as well. So I work with a vast amount of individuals suffering with all illnesses.
Okay, so we are glad to have you here today. We are getting ready to start, and May is Mental Health Month, and
yes.
So Nate and I are really, we like to focus on mental health issues several times through the year, and so my question for you, just to get us started, is what are you seeing in your practice? What kinds of things are people struggling with these days?
Well, like I said, it can be a numerous amount of things, but to just narrow it down, I often see depression, I often see anxiety, this transitional, just transitioning with living, with age range, transitioning with society, and the dynamics that are currently happening to us right now.
Okay, say more about that. What's happening, what do you see happening in society that's impacting folks' mental health?
Well, we have these racial barriers and injustices that are affecting us socially, emotionally, and physically. So we're trying to navigate ourselves, to kind of deal with, one, working, providing for our families, helping with kids, and still having to relearn or focus on how to keep everyone safe. We are dealing with multiple instances with police injustices, and trying to tell our kids that we have hope, we have a future, but ourselves as adults are struggling with that as well.
So I guess what we hear, particularly in the Black community, is that people have resources available and they don't seek them out. I work in human resources at my other job, and we have free counseling available to employees, but it's really, really underutilized.
Right.
They don't have to tell us they just can go, but people don't take, less than a portion of a percent of people take advantage of that, and we know more than those people take drugs for psychiatric or mental health conditions. What gets in the way of people seeking help?
Well, like you said, it deals with this stigma, mainly in the African American community. We have issues when working with mental health services. We don't often trust them. We often are low with representation. And representation, it's not a lot of Black therapists or psychologists, and oftentimes we feel like the racial barrier is high, and it can lower our chances of continuing to go seek services, or the understanding. We feel misunderstood.
So let's talk more about this stigma, because I think there's more to talk about there. People don't seek help because, first of all, there's the difference in I might not be understood. But why do people think? What do you think about the whole "I'm crazy" thing? I have to be crazy to see a therapist. The whole, that people will think ill of me or think I can't manage my own life, and so going there is a risk.
Right. That is also something that I would consider a stigma. As you guys may know, in the Black household, often talking about mental health, we do say, you're not crazy, you don't need to see that, but the aspect is not about being crazy, because we don't have to be crazy to seek help. It can just be managing managing our workload, managing our mental health. You're exhausted, you're running on low fumes, so that you need to seek help, right?
Yeah, just managing stress. I would honestly believe there's no such thing as success without some measure of stress.
Right.
And that stress needs to be managed in some way, form, or fashion. And that's something that God has also called us to do, is to, in all our get understanding,
Right.
Yeah.
So Nate has talked about the Christian community, and in particular pastors, there's an extra stigma. Talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
Well, I have encountered where a lot of pastors or people who are viewed to be in leadership do not take the necessary steps to take care of themselves. We are so busy taking care of other people that we don't take care of ourselves. And if the stigma is bad for the average black man or woman, it's even more so for somebody who's supposed to have had it all together.
Right.
And I'm just knowing myself. I've even recently considered just sitting down and talking to somebody who maybe not know me don't know me as well. I won't feel judged by, and just even say, hey, I need counseling on this or that. So, have you encountered, or what would be your words to somebody who is actually in ministry or leadership of some kind, even if it's not a pastoral role, any kind of leadership, that where they're facing some kind of stress and should seek some kind of counseling?
Well, I guess I would say to them, like, we all know that we're not invincible. Everybody can deal with mental health issues, right? We all need help. We all need self-care. We all need boundaries. So, like I said.
Yeah, self-care is a really good word, a way of putting it, because that's what it is. It's, like Paula says often, you can't pour out of an empty vessel. And if we don't take care of ourselves, then we can't really minister to other people.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So you have a special focus in your practice. Who are your clients in general? What's your focus?
Well, my clients in general, I mainly see a lot of millennials, surprisingly.
Really?
Wow.
Yes. Like, I feel like millennials are really trying to break that stigma of not seeing services. Like, I feel like it's almost like a trend now to say, I have a therapist. Honestly, I see a lot of African American women between the ages of like 20, 28.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Cool.
So I noticed you also
So you say
have.
date women that are 29 and above. That's what I got from that. Date women who are 29 and above.
But now, okay, so Nate's a teacher, and we are really concerned about our young people. That this teen suicide thing just blows my mind.
Right.
It's the second leading cause of death behind car accidents between, I want to say between 12 and 18 or something like that. So is that new, or are we just reporting it, or is something going on that's upping those numbers?
Right. I would say that it definitely isn't something that's new. I just believe that we're just now becoming more aware of it. I say that because many African Americans, we didn't believe that suicide was in our culture.
Right. That was always white people did that.
Right, exactly. And so we were a little behind on prevention tactics or knowing what to say or what to listen to when our kids or teens or even adults are saying things that we should pay attention to.
So, and we have been talking about this before, but how can we help our children? Because, if adults don't come forward, it's got to be even more difficult for a 10, 11, 12-year-old. What can we do to help our children, our friends' children, our own children? What are some things that you recommend to help this situation?
Well, one, we have to pay attention. A lot of kids say things that are odd or out of their character, so we shouldn't just bypass it and just ignore them or say like, he's lying, or when they say like, oh, I want to kill myself, or I'm not doing well today, we kind of just ignore it. We shouldn't. We need to, that's the time to step in, that's the time to sit them down, ask them more questions, figure out what's going on at school, like what things are they lacking in now. We have to just step up.
Yeah, even if it's something that's not originating at school. As a teacher, I've found that it's worth it investing the time throughout the training day to find out what's going on with that kid so you can teach them.
Exactly.
Say they are having a outside problem at home. If I can at least get to them and let them know how much I care about them.
Right.
It's easier for me to break down to them and say, hey, could you sit still for 5 minutes while I teach this lesson? I'll be right back with you,
That's important that you say, because to let them know that you care about them. Give them a hug, a handshake, anything to let them know like, hey, if somebody's not being loving to you today, well, I am, right?
For sure.
We're going to take a break here, but Tori, before we do, go ahead and give your contact information if people want more information. Okay, well, you can find me on Facebook at Counseling Heals with Sales, on Instagram, Healing with Sales. I also will take email, counselortories@gmail.com. Thank you. We'll be back with Tori Seals, a provisionally licensed professional counselor, here in a little bit. as we continue to uplift the community as Kansas City's voice for spiritual living. This is KCPZ Praise 95.3 FM.
This is KCPZ Praise 95.3 FM, Kansas City's first FM gospel station, playing the very best in rap, rhythm, and praise. And the Get Up Morning Show with Erica Campbell, Monday through Friday from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. Kansas City, you are back listening to Sunday Afternoons with Paul and Nate. I am Nate Salary.
And I am Paula Renee, and we are drawing on the Word of God and gospel music and people in the community to help make ourselves and our communities better. Today, we are visiting again with Tori Seals, PLPC, a counselor. Hi again, Tori.
Hi.
So we're talking about the stigma about seeing a counselor and that how that can help you. But we were talking off air about, yes, that you need to do that, but what are some other things that can contribute to good mental health?
Right. Of course, our physical health, working out, what are we consuming, Nate? You know, all of us should know, like, the negatives about fast food.
How it can make it. There's about fat. Okay. Fast food.
Fast food.
Okay.
How it can make us groggy, and you know, that's not the best for us in our longevity, right?
Right.
Yeah,
and
right.
Oftentimes when we consume those foods, our mind is not 100.
And what about sugar?
Sugar. We know sugar, butter.
I knew it's somebody named Sugar. I hope you're doing well in college. Go ahead, keep going. Come on. Down in the land, I met her and then she got blessed.
Okay.
All right.
What about other lifestyle type things?
Well, we can say our consumption of alcohol, sweets, anything, or even down to the music that we listen to. You know, when we wake up, what are we putting into ourselves? You know, that often is how we direct our day. You know,
Yeah.
What are we doing? Are we journaling when we get up? Are we praying? Are we reading something, a devotional? What are you doing?
You know, sometimes I find myself, I have to divorce myself from the news
Yes.
because that can send me on a downward path and just do something else. Yeah, I want to know what's going on, but if it's taking me down a negative path, sometimes I just don't listen for a couple of days.
Right.
And there's a lot going on that's not positive.
What are some positive forms of self-care?
Some positive forms
may
of
not know
self-care, right? Like I mentioned before, is getting physical, at least 30 minutes a day, 4 times a week of being active. And I always talk about journaling. Journaling is such a great skill to learn.
Okay.
Putting your thoughts onto paper, because oftentimes when we, keep the thoughts in our head, what do? Beat us up. They become even larger thoughts. We start thinking about times in the past. So with journaling, we're able to, just get it out there. And oftentimes when you read it back, we're like, okay, wait a minute, this is not really, what I think it is, or this is not a connection to the past. It's something I can work on presently, right? Also, like on my YouTube channel, I have this thing about self-care, and I talked about 50 ways to take a break. Trying new things, take an adventure out of Kansas City. Oftentimes we live here so long, but we don't try new things. We're in the same routines, right?
Yeah.
So meet new people, read a book, anything, right?
Yeah. That's some good ideas. Kansas City is great for culture and a lot of things. I like that idea. So for the 50 ways to
take a break.
50 ways to take a break, we're going to go to her YouTube page, Healing with Seals.
Yeah.
So I know you don't, this is not the focus of today, but I did find some things about you as I was looking on the internet. Is it true that you were Miss Black Missouri?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Oh,
So that on the internet was true, and when you walked in, I'm just a beautiful young lady. I'm
Thank
not
you.
surprised. But I was reading kind of what you said to the judges, and one of your back then you had said you wanted to be a clinical psychologist. Has that always been your path, and why that particular path?
Well, yes, I do feel like that has always been my path. Like, ever since I was young, I always had friends that come to me, and I was always an open ear, warm, gentle, never really telling other people's secrets and just helping them cope. So I just progressed and earned my bachelor's degree at UCM in psychology with a minor in sociology and women's gender studies. So I always had I always knew that I wanted to continue my education. So back then I wanted to get my PhD, but then I decided to stop right now at my master's and just see what else I wanted to do before then.
Okay. But so everybody can't do every job, and it sounds
Right.
like you were a match for what you're doing now.
Thank you.
So we have talked about kind of your experience and some of the things you've seen in your practice.
Right.
I know you can't say, what you do is confidential, obviously, but are there some success stories of people that have taken the step to seek help and had a better outcome than they would perhaps without?
Right, right. I think the important thing that you just said is taking the step. So I feel like every client that I have seen is a success story already.
Okay.
Because the hardest thing is taking the first step. Making that phone call, sending an email, and coming to counseling and being consistent.
Okay.
How long would a counseling session last?
Like one session is 50 minutes.
50 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to somebody who might have a drawback or feel some kind of way just about the perception of paying to talk to somebody? You know what I mean?
Say that again.
Kinda,
What
yeah.
are you talking about?
Like, a lot of people in our communities worry about the cost of everything. You know?
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Why
how...
look at me like that? That's a good question, Nate. All right.
How we were talking, like, kind of before doing break, is a lot of companies often give their workers free sessions, but a lot of people don't take advantage of that. So when you talk about costs, at least use those free sessions, and then a lot of therapists accept insurances as well.
There we go.
And then around a community like Swope Health or Community Mental Health, they offer free or reduced cost services. Like I did my practicum at UMKC, and it's a place called CCAS, and they have, but it's like a sliding scale and goes as low as $5 to $20 to have services.
Yeah, $20, you lose that at McDonald's. Really? Or not.
So
Chop
tell
down
us-
fork and walk house.
All right.
All right, go ahead,
We
please.
have fun. No, I wanted to find out some more about your YouTube channel. What do you do
Yes.
there?
So on my YouTube channel is a place that I try to be, like I talked about representation. So I want the African American community or anybody that's viewing it to say like, okay, this is a African American therapist, so I'm talking from a standpoint that they should be able to identify with. And so I just talk about coping skills, books that I've read. I talk about panel discussions where I gather other therapists and we talk about various topics. I try to answer questions whenever somebody prompts them to me. So it's just a variety of videos that I'm doing to help the community and help them to break the stigma.
And so, what's the address? Is that the right way to ask?
Yeah.
How do we find
What's
your
your YouTube
YouTube?
address?
You can go to YouTube and then type in Healing with Seals.
Healing with Seals.
Yes.
And go ahead and give your contact information for people that want more information.
Okay. So on Facebook, you can reach me at Counseling Heals with Seals, Instagram, Healing with Seals, Blogger, www.healingwithseals.com, YouTube again, Healing with Seals, and my email is counselortorys@gmail.com.
And we'll go ahead and put a link to some of
sure.
those out on our Facebook page so
Yes.
our listeners can link to you directly.
Thank you.
And this interview will be on her YouTube channel, which is why we're not airing it here. You wanted to go to her YouTube station and kind of get yourself introduced and familiar with it, and be a good place to get some wisdom and gain and glean some knowledge. This is not only a counselor, this is a counselor who is called to counsel by God, anointed to do so, and that's why we have her here.
Well, and I was going to ask you, one of the things earlier we talked about the fact that you say right out you're a Christian,
Yes.
but you don't only treat Christians. Does
No.
that ever get in the way for you, or how do you approach that with someone who's not a believer?
Right. I never have experienced a time that it got in the way, because I'm able to fit the mold of every client. If they don't want that, okay. If they do, I'm here for you. We can pray together. We can talk about God. I can reference, biblical references, whatever you want. I'm not here to say if you're not a believer that you're wrong, or I'm not here to judge you or anything of that nature.
Well, that sounds wonderful. So you would not.
I want to turn them away. Right.
Yeah, that's the Bible says, "He that wins souls or she that wins souls is wise." It's not wise to let Christianity keep you from reaching people.
Exactly.
When the goal is to reach people.
And I often have experience during my time as I had a client who didn't identify as a Christian, and then we had brief times that he may have mentioned it, and I took those opportunities to talk to him about that. And then towards the end of our session, he actually was going to church and telling me about his experiences. So like you said, I don't turn anybody away, because you just never know what can happen.
And it sounds like on the reverse side, you don't force those beliefs.
Yeah,
on,
no.
say that that's the only way for you to be mentally healthy.
Exactly, no.
Well, that's great. So we are very excited to have you as part of our community, and we're going to put a link out to a couple of. You've got lots of stuff we can link to, so we'll
Yeah,
take
sure.
care of that on the Sunday Afternoon with Paula and Nate on Praise 95 Facebook page, and so our listeners can get there quickly. And any last words you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, take the first step. I know it's the hardest step, but it's well worth it. Often we just stick to praying and relying on God, which is great because He is, you know, the one and only. But God did create, you know, these advocates and these therapists for a reason. So using spirituality and therapy together is a great, powerful method. So just take the first step.
Yeah.
God is the creator of all of our resources.
Yes.
We definitely look forward to having you back again soon.
Yeah.
I want this to be an ongoing thing because mental health is such where we can't just talk about it once and leave it alone. We have to constantly minister to this if we are aiming to see change in our community.
Exactly, consistency.
So we'll be there to, we'll be that link for our listeners to use,
Yeah.
and we'll talk to
It's
you
a
again.
partnership.
And absolutely,
Thank you.
we are uplifting the community as Kansas City's voice for spiritual living. It's KCPZ Praise 95.3 FM.